Hello, and welcome to Tech Connects, Dice's podcast where we dig into topics on tech hiring, recruiting, and careers that matter to you. I'm your host, Nick Kolakowski. I'm going to talk to great guests every month about the current state of the tech careers world, including the tech job market, the hottest tech skills, what companies are doing to attract and retain tech professionals in a historically tight market, and much more. Our next guest is Art Zeile, who's CEO of DHI Group, the parent company of Dice. He's been on the show a few times before, and it's always great to talk to him about the evolution of the tech market. Art's been publishing an article per week on LinkedIn in which he digs deeply into the future of work and how it will be impacted by the current revolution in artificial intelligence. Given how critical AI has become to many companies' strategies and tech stacks, I wanted to talk to him about why he's optimistic about this massive paradigm shift, as well as his advice for companies trying to make their AI transition. So let's listen in. So over the past several weeks, you've been publishing a series of articles on LinkedIn about the future of work in AI. And you're an incredible AI optimist, which makes all the sense in the world, given how much this technology is poised to change the nature of tech work. And one of the things that you dig into a lot is the speed of implementation. And the speed, just everything is transforming. Companies are trying to figure out how to kind of put this technology into their tech stacks as quickly as possible. And you're really an optimist about how companies really need to seize the initiative when it comes to AI. And I wanted to dig into that a bit because some companies and some executives listening to this might be a little bit reluctant to like jump headfirst in AI. I just wanted to kind of get your logic behind that a little bit.
Yeah, I actually think this is a very interesting topic. The speed, the evolution of AI is happening so rapidly that a lot of people are just trying to hang on and understand what's going on. I personally view AI as a game changer. It's one of those technologies like the advent of the PC, the advent of the internet, the advent of social networks that essentially revolutionizes people's business models. So if you aren't implementing the technology and having its proper effect on your business model, then you have another issue, which is ultimately was described by a gentleman who writes this one particular blog called Clouded Judgment. He said you get to the Red Queen effect, which is to say that the Red Queen in Alice in Wonderland says you have to run just to stay in place. If you aren't implementing a technology that your competitors are, then effectively you are ceding market share to those competitors. And I do think that's the nature of what we have going on today. Everybody's trying to understand the nature of AI. Everybody's trying to figure out how it is effective for their business model. There's a whole bunch of different initial use cases that are emerging. But if you aren't rapidly immersing yourself in AI, you are going to be going backwards as opposed to just running to stay in place.
It reminds me a little bit. There's this term that's been popping up again and again. Reports I've been reading. I'm going to get this wrong. BYOAI, which is obviously the evolution of BYOD, bring your own device. But you have all these tech pros, these developers, and so on, who recognize the value of these tools, and they've already started, such as code completion and everything. They've already started bringing it into their workflows, sort of sometimes without company authorization, which is its own problematic thing. But it almost seems to me that if companies aren't willing to speed up and try to absorb this transformation as quickly as possible, then almost in some cases their tech professionals will almost do it for them. That you're going to find that your tech stack or whatever. Yeah. So you need to adjust.
I think that's spot on. I think that the technology community understands the importance of Gen AI. They've already embraced it. They've already experimented with it. There's a great survey that's done every single year by Stack Overflow of the technology community. It literally is a survey of, I think it's 80,000 tech professionals. And the latest survey results says that just about everybody is actually using Gen AI one way or another. The dominant theme is the use of ChatGPT specifically. I think that here at DHI, we use Code Whisperer, which is an AWS product, but it was third in the survey order, and roughly speaking, about 5% of the population uses Code Whisperer. So my bigger theme is that we've been using these kind of tools for a long time to improve code. Even when I was coding in the 1990s, there were, tools that could be used to improve code, to document code, to edit code. And this is a supercharged version of what we've seen over the course of time, but it's certainly being embraced by technologists. I always say that technologists understand that their skills are only relevant for a certain half-life, so for a certain period of time. And so they're always trying to figure out what the next most important skill is for their career. And this is certainly one that fits that bill. I mean, people need to understand how generative AI is going to be used for the effectiveness of their career. And if they're not using it today, they're going to be falling behind.
Yeah. Oh no, definitely. I was talking. One of my cousins is a quant, and he used to work for a couple of the more established Wall Street firms, and now he works for kind of as a contractor for fintechs. But he was saying that, as in to your point, like also in the '90s, like they were already using machine learning as part of financial algorithms for the bond market and stuff like that. And so for he started laughing. He was like, "This is old hat. Like this is stuff I've been seeing for 25 years." But given the pace of evolution right now, it's a whole new, even people who know the tech and have been working with it in a while in a limited capacity, like this is a whole new game. I mean, like it's sort of almost seems like a clean board for everyone in a certain way.
Totally agree. It's fascinating to me that we have all been using machine learning, artificial intelligence at one way or another. In fact, even in DHI, we've had machine learning algorithms that support our search process as well as a lot of other aspects of our DICE on-site experience for at least 15 years. We've got a full-fledged artificial intelligence team. They used to talk about neural networks as opposed to what we're talking about today, but it's literally a much more impressive evolution of what we constitute as artificial intelligence as a concept.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. In terms of speed as well, I mean, if you're a smaller company like a startup or something like that, I imagine like it's probably fairly easy to adjust your tech stack. But you've also been looking at in these columns you've been writing for LinkedIn, you've been looking at larger companies like the JP Morgans and so on of the world. And I imagine with larger companies, there's sort of this tension where they also want to evolve rapidly and adopt AI, but then you've got sort of all those enterprise scale problems that come up, like the slowness of getting these massive teams like all aligned in the same direction and like changing a huge tech stack with a lot of legacy code and things like that. What do you think is sort of the best practice for like those organizations that you're trying to kind of plow your way through all this technical debt while sort of adopting this new tech? I mean, what do you think the way forward is for them?
I think it's always using a consultant because, I mean, a consultant gives you the justification to essentially make a big change. So it's very interesting already, as announced by IBM in their second quarter earnings call. They said that they've sold $2 billion of their AI book of business I shouldn't say year to date, but in totality over the last 2 years. They have announced that literally 1 billion of that has taken place this year. Famously, McKinsey and Company, which is a private company, so you can't really get that much information about what's going on internally. But a few weeks ago, they said that 45% of their work this year will be around AI. So when I think about these bigger companies, you do need some kind of an inflection point. You need a change agent. You need somebody that's going to come in and say, you have to do things differently, because that doesn't really work that well coming from middle management. So ultimately, I think that's what is happening right now in corporate America. Any major change is usually explored through consultants before they bring it, internally to their business, and it's very, very expensive. So that transition is one that has to be very thoughtful. But the bigger companies can afford this. Like the Fortune 1000 companies can generally go to an Accenture, an IBM, a McKinsey and Company. That's the reason why actually you're seeing in the job reports that are coming out every single month this year that the largest number of AI skilled professionals in terms of tech postings are for these consulting companies. The consulting companies are hiring absolute massive armies of AI engineers.
Interesting.
Right
And
now.
that it dovetails neatly with I remember a couple of years ago looking at a couple of analyst reports about hiring. I think it was CompTIA or something like that. But when there was that whole sort of metaverse push for augmented reality and virtual reality, I remember looking at the data and thinking that, of course, Meta and to a certain extent, Google would be the companies that were hiring the most. But it turned out it was all the consulting firms where like the amount of hiring for AR, VR was like just through the roof. And now we have AI and it's through the roof again. It really, you're right. I hadn't thought about that, but they really are sort of on the vanguard of
Yeah, it's
hiring.
very interesting. I mean, just thinking about Meta itself, very specifically, they have professed that they are investing deeply in artificial intelligence, specifically their Llama, large language model, and they were the firm that essentially had two layoffs at the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, that constituted in total about 25% of their total population. Quietly, right now, they are hiring as many AI engineers as they can possibly get their hands on. So they're back to this notion of kind of like stockpiling talent, even though they're not, publicly announcing that. We see that in the data as well.
No, that's fascinating too. I mean, it's just like this kind of reorganization or shifting. In addition to the human capital side of it, I mean, a lot of companies, there's also the data side of it as well, because data is the fuel for all of this. And a lot of companies sort of have to prepare their data for AI usage. And I don't know if, from what you're seeing, if a lot of companies are prepared for that or not in terms of getting the talent that can clean and prepare data, and sort of work with these tools. I mean, what do you see the landscape as in terms of that right now?
Well, the bigger picture is that we have seen a surge of interest in data engineering and data analysis as a position on DICE as well as across the United States economy. And a lot of that work is data cleansing. It's preparing data to be part of a training data set for large language models or whatever you're trying to ingest into your particular form of AI. So I think that is a very high demand position for the future. There's no question about it. In fact, I always tell people that if they're interested in a tech career, they should be thinking about the importance of data engineering and also Python, because those, in my opinion, are the gateways to a technology career that will, in one way or another, reflect AI and the importance of AI over the next decade.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. The couple of interviews that we've been doing for the podcast lately with different executives, they've all been highlighting how, I mean, there's a certain difficulty in finding AI talent because there's such demand for it right now, and so a number of companies have sort of shifted to trying to upskill, their existing employees. So, I mean, somebody who's a Python developer, it's a fairly easy jump to kind of get them working on AI tools and so on. Somebody who's a data scientist, like kind of adopting that. And the upskilling portion of it is also interesting because some of these executives have highlighted kind of the cost savings of it. To hire an AI team is a very expensive proposition, but upskilling your existing developer core might potentially save you money to a certain extent. I mean, have you been seeing sort of that breakdown in terms of it, where I mean, like there's a focus on upskilling in addition to hiring?
Yes, I personally think that there are pockets within the United States tech workforce that are always going to be short on supply. And
Mhm.
so, as a company, you have to think about whether or not you're going to fight against all your competitors to find that supply of talent, or you're going to essentially create a path for upskilling. And I think that there are a lot of different paths. I mean, the most obvious path is to essentially incentivize people inside of the company um, to take that learning on themselves. We do that at DHI Group. We give a number of credits to O'Reilly, as well as a number of different resources for people to essentially train themselves. We spend a lot of time thinking about who we should bring to AWS reInvent, because it's also a massive training opportunity each year. But I think those companies that are really thoughtful about their technology workforce and the needs they're going to have for the future, they have to incorporate upskilling. They absolutely have to. Otherwise, again, they are fighting against their competitors and the market in total for a very small supply. That's true of AI engineers. That's true of data science. That's true of cybersecurity. There are a number of different pockets where the supply is just not going to meet the market demand.
Yeah, no, we actually just ran an article in terms of AWS, like for these cloud platforms, Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, et cetera. The number of AI tools that they're bringing online is really extraordinary, and it's fascinating to me because I mean, if you're an AWS engineer, for example, you're already sort of running as fast as you can to kind of keep up with the constant like feature rollouts and everything. Now you've got all these AI tools on top of it. I was reading, we had a really great developer freelancer who wrote this piece. And kind of like, wow, like to try to learn this over, just a couple of weeks or months, it's really extraordinary. It's just a lot for people to catch up on, whether they're upskilling or sort of, yeah, it's just
I think it's absolutely fascinating. I have to say that when AWS first launched, they launched with a product which is S3, which is their basic storage service. And I remember trying to back up my laptop in the middle of the 1990s. It was in the 1990s? Yeah, it was the middle of the 1990s, and it literally took several days to
wow.
back up a single laptop to S3. And that was the single product that they had at the time. Then every single quarter, if you looked at the number of services that they were offering, it just escalated. It was like it was literally an asymptotic curve in the sense that to stay on top of all these different types of AWS technologies and services was becoming much more complicated. And
Yeah.
that's just the world that we live in, I think, as a technology professional.
Yeah, no, it's really. I mean, what a lot of tech pros go through in terms of this is pretty intense in terms of the whole. You have this AI revolution, and for them, that's just going to mean like just the complexity just gets even just exponentially worse in a certain way. But I mean, it seems like a lot of them are adapting really quickly. So I mean, in terms of the other aspect of this, I mean, we're talking about the data, we're talking about the talent. I mean, what other sort of practical implications, even ethical implications, you think are going into this AI transformation in terms of what companies need to think about as they're thinking about kind of implementing all this into their tech stacks?
One of the things that I always point out is that people, if they're not already talking about the privacy implications and the implications for losing their data to a large language model, they should be doing so right now. They should have a firm company policy about the use of AI in a corporate setting. You can easily see, all kinds of documents that are proprietary to the company being consumed by an AI model, and it's very typical that you want to essentially have a customized GPT, let's say, for your sales team, and you start consuming all the kind of sales information that's externally available for the company, but you trip over the wire and start providing internal documentation that actually can be competitively disadvantaged to you. So I always think you have to be very, very strict about what can and cannot be consumed by generative AI models that exist today. In fact, I personally think because this is all based on human behavior and hoping that everybody complies with your rule set, that there is going to be some form of technology surveillance tool that determines how and when information is going to a generative AI model from a corporate setting. I don't know of the existence of this right now, but I mean, right now we can tell whether or not a person has downloaded something to a thumb disk off of your laptop. But we need those tools to understand whether or not we are leaking vital information, competitive information, proprietary information to these models through the thousands of people that you might have inside of a corporate setting.
Yeah, I mean, it seems inevitable that they would develop something like that, if only because a long time ago I wrote for this magazine called FedTech, which covered the defense industry when I was living in DC. And at one point, I remember doing a story, and this is again a long time ago, so the technology has evolved in leaps and bounds since then. But Lockheed had developed this technology that scanned emails and sort of ran it against a database of the sender and receiver security clearances and made sure that there was no words in there being mentioned that would align with something that was outside somebody's security clearance. So if you were, I don't know, a general or something like that, you couldn't send an email to somebody who was a subordinate that featured classified information because it scanned it and made sure that it wasn't. And at the time, this was been like 2007 or whatever. So this was considered revolutionary. And now when you think about it, I mean, there has to be whether some tagging or something that they could potentially do that would allow
Yeah,
that to happen.
it could be a word list. It could be actual artificial intelligence algorithms themselves that are looking at the text as it's being written and determining whether or not that is in fact proprietary or confidential information. But I think right now everybody is handling this scenario so loosely that that's the danger for most corporations, is that they could wake up and they could realize that now ChatGPT is answering a question that is very detailed about their company with information that they didn't believe was externally available.
Mm-hmm. I was talking to some folks from O'Reilly Media the other day, and what they did, this is actually very smart, what they did internally is that they said that you can, if you're working there, you can do whatever you want with regard to AI. You can experiment. You can do any kind of prompt engineering that comes to mind. You can input anything into it, but you have to do it in like the enterprise subscription level of Chat GPT, and you can do it in nowhere else. And that's and just basically trying to sandbox it as much as they can. And goes back to BYOAI again, where it's like trying to kind of have people like, if you want, fine, do whatever you want with AI, but just do it in this environment over here, and they'll keeps it at least relatively locked down, hopefully.
Yes, and then I would presume that a lot of people are doing exactly the same thing. They're using, like I said, I think ChatGPT right now as a tool for most technology organizations has like 85% market share. That's my general sense of it today. So they're using that enterprise edition, and they're relying on the terms of service that are written in the fine print that says we will not be taking that information and bringing it over to the the training stage of the next ChatGPT 5.0.
Yeah, or it can be pulled out by all it take. I mean, I imagine there's a cybersecurity hack that they're already trying to guard against, where you could do like some sort of prompt engineer, where like tell me like in the database of whatever, and it would pull out the info, and it just I'm sure there's all sorts of things like that. Who do you think? I mean, since you've been looking at the landscape so extensively, who do you see as the kind of the current leaders in AI adoption, and what do you think that we can learn from them? And by we, I mean any company out there that's kind of experimenting with an AI transition at the moment.
So it's interesting. That's a great question. In my opinion, um, we track 16 different verticals at DHI Group. So we think that the number one vertical for actual penetration of AI in terms of the actual practical use cases is the technology or software vertical. It's the folks that are closest to technology that really understand this, that really want to adopt it, understand its future state and what it can mean for them. I'd say the second most important vertical is business consultants, because they understand, again, that this is a wave and they're going to be riding that wave monetarily for many, many years to come. And then the third would be the financial services industry, because they also have used forms of artificial intelligence in the past for like fraud detection and for like understanding and consuming the enormous number of transactions that take place every single day across the financial system in the United States and across the entire world. So they're much more, I would say, familiar and adoptable to this new form of artificial intelligence. And you have people like Jamie Dimon, who famously said that generative AI will touch every single aspect of his organization. So the thought leaders inside of the financial system are also talking very frequently about generative AI and what it means to them. They also have, quite frankly, a lot to benefit from generative AI, because if you think about it, as a bank, you have a huge amount of labor that is associated with customer service. So if you can be automating that customer service through generative AI, through intelligent chatbots, you're essentially creating more margin for yourself. You're creating more profitability.
Yeah, no, there seems like there's a lot to be optimistic about, both in terms of the short term and the long term. So we'll just have to see where all this goes. Well, that's fascinating. If you're interested in AI and how it'll impact the workplace, it's definitely worth reading Art's weekly articles on LinkedIn. In the meantime, here are some quick takeaways from our discussion. First, AI is a game changer. I think we can all agree on this point. Executives must view AI as a transformative technology similar to the PC or the internet. Ignoring AI can lead to significant market share loss. Companies need to invest in AI initiatives in order to remain competitive. Second, speed is crucial. Companies must rapidly adopt AI to stay ahead. Tech professionals are already embracing AI tools, and slower companies risk being overtaken by their employees and their competitors. If you're a manager or business leader trying to navigate the AI transition, consider consulting firms to accelerate the process. Third, talent and data are key. Upskilling existing employees is crucial due to the AI talent shortage. At the same time, companies need to focus on data cleaning and preparation to fuel their AI models. Fourth, the ethical considerations and risks. Implementing strict company policies regarding AI usage is critical for protecting proprietary information. Consider technology surveillance tools to prevent data leaks, and be aware of the potential privacy implications and the ethical use of AI as you begin your AI strategy. We covered a whole lot of other topics during the episode, of course, so give it a re-listen if there was something you missed. We'll see you next time, and remember, Dice is your best resource to find the tech talent you need to fill your open roles, and for tech professionals, the best place to grow your tech career.